I was just I was just gonna say like I get confused between like the brain's function in this because I know that like this is the problem. This is where I get so confused because I know that in a reductionist point of view, the brain is where all mental processes, where the I sense comes from, where the emotions and thoughts, even though that like the hard problem of consciousness is that how do I know or how am I able to experience what happiness feels like? So it's incomplete in that way, but I'm just confused as to how these all interrelate, how the brain relates to the eye sense. Is the soul like it's just very confusing. You know what I mean? It's I
So
can't
it's
articulate it all because there's so many things I want to say at once.
so Dr. B. Madhavapuri has given this very concise and very deep, very applicable quote. Text without context is a pretext of knowledge. So now we'll just try to unpack that and give an example of it. So if we read just one part of a book, she killed her husband, then we get the idea that this lady is a murderer. Whoever she is, she's a murderer. So we're taking text, but we're not considering its context. So we arrive at this idea that she's a murderer. But then if we consider the context of the rest of the sentence or the rest of the paragraph, it says Susan's husband attacked her. In self-defense, she killed her husband. Now we have a whole different idea of what's going on here. Instead of thinking that she's a murderer, right, she's just defending herself. This is a proper response. Might be a bit dramatic, but it's a proper response. So in the same way, the text, we need the context of that text. If we don't have context, it's a pretext. It's misleading. It's incomplete and misleading. They want to start with the appearance, and they want to get to the higher order function,
Mhm.
starting with the appearance. They want to describe, I mean, we have to think about what's really going on, right? They want to describe consciousness. They want to start by describing the brain as independent from consciousness, as a material entity independent of consciousness.
Mhm.
Although the very descriptive activity is already going on within consciousness, but they have to ignore that, right? So first they have to ignore that, and then they have to posit that there is this independent existence of a brain,
Mhm.
and then they have to speculate that the physical activity of this brain is producing something which is non-physical.
Yeah,
And they do
which is
that
very
by
difficult.
they do that by describing correlations between experiential phenomena and the neurons firing, right? They call it neural correlates of consciousness. So they say when we hit you on the knee and you feel pain, you're feeling pain, but we're also watching these groups of neurons light up. So now we want to say that because we're observing a correlation, that there's causation. We want to say because these neurons are lighting up when you're experiencing pain consciously, so that means that these neurons are causing the pain. These neurons are causing your consciousness. So that's a giant leap from
Yeah, it is.
correlation
You're right.
to causation. That's what we were talking about last time, right? Mistaking the
Right.
map for the terrain.
Right.
There's a
Exactly.
correlation. There's a correlation, but that's that's not the accurate
Yeah.
thing. Rather, it's a model of the real.
It's just the model.
It's a model. The
And
very
it's not a fully it doesn't fully explain like how that happens, how that those neurons are doing that thing, and it's just saying that when X process happens, these neurons light up and this happens. It doesn't tell you anything more than that.
no, it doesn't.
Uh,
So like Hegel suggested before, by acknowledging what happens through the reductionist approach, then we can reconstruct what not to do, right? So by acknowledging that the content of consciousness is alienated from consciousness as separate from consciousness, and then consciousness forgets about itself and takes the content as real, independent of consciousness, right? So
Mhm.
that's the first step of what's done. Everything is happening in consciousness. Everything is content of consciousness. And in that conscious activity, consciousness is projecting its content outside of itself. Then consciousness is accepting that the content has priority over the consciousness itself. And then the consciousness is forgetting that it made that decision. So it's becoming self-forgetful. It's still conscious because that's its nature is to be conscious, but it's
Mhm.
forgetting the whole process of projecting the content,
Right.
assuming that it's primary, and then forgetting about itself. That whole process it disappears. And now
Mhm.
you just have a consciousness that doesn't know itself and what it's conscious of as being accepted as the primary reality. And
Mhm.
now it's trying to explain itself through that content which is assumed to be outside of itself,
Oh, so I see the problem.
right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's
so
hilarious. Yeah.
so it's a process of forgetfulness that needs to be remembered in every aspect of science that has produced reductionistic explanations of nature, and then as a result reductionistic explanations of conscious entities. And
Mhm.
through reconstructing that and properly situating it in the context of conscious activity, then we can move towards what is the science of spirit, what is beyond consciousness,